Did you know that the biggest bribery scandal in American history was connected to oil wells? An oil well, a bribery deal, and a government that was shaken to its foundations. This is the story of the Teapot Dome Scandal, which took place in the 1920s. When America was going through a period of prosperity, but behind the scenes, winds of corruption were blowing. This scandal is not just a story of politics, but a story of a clash of power, greed, and morality. In the 1920s, America was at the peak of economic growth. President Warren G. Harding had promised the nation a return to normalcy, but behind this promise was a storm that would shake the foundations of government. The people were busy with wealth. Industries were flourishing, but something else was going on inside the government. Powerful individuals were using public resources for personal gain. This was the backdrop from which the Teapot Dome Scandal began. Albert B. Fall, a name that has become a symbol of corruption in history. He was the Secretary of the Interior, an influential and seemingly honest man, but his decision shook the political conscience of America. He secretly leased the Teapot Dome oil fields in Wyoming and the Elk Hills in California to private companies. No bidding, no transparent contract. Everything was done behind closed doors. In exchange for this deal, Fall received huge bribes, some in the form of checks, some in cash, and some in the form of gold and cattle. The scandal came to light when a few investigative journalists raised the question of why the government's oil fields were given to private companies. These journalists emerged as defenders of the public interest. Their questions shook the entire system. At first, the government all but denied it. President Harding remained silent. Fall tried to hide the facts, but the truth could not be hidden for long. A Senate investigation began, and Fall's face was exposed. This was the moment when America first realized that greed lurked in the halls of power. During the investigation, it was revealed that Albert Fall had received millions of dollars in bribes from Harry Sinclair and Edward Deheny. The details of the bribes made the public furious. People began to cry, "This was our oil, our land, and it went into their pockets." The media dubbed it the greatest betrayal. The court summoned Fall, but he continued to use delaying tactics. Finally, when the evidence became irrefutable, history sent an American minister to prison for the first time. The nation's conscience took a breath after seeing this scene. Justice, albeit belatedly, was served. Fall's going to prison was a symbolic moment. A powerful man bowed to the law. When the judge in the courtroom pronounced the verdict, those words were a lesson to the entire nation. No one is above the law. Defeat on Fall's face, but satisfaction on the nation's face. But at the same time, a question arose. Was it just one person's fault or the fault of the entire system? President Harding's death left many questions unanswered. Was he a participant in all of this, or did Fall do it all alone? The debate continues to this day, but one thing is certain. Harding's era is now always remembered as the era of scandal. When the president died, the scars of his government remained. After Teapot Dome, the power of the media reached its peak. Newspapers ran headlines, "The teapot boils over." Every citizen was talking about it. Comments were being made on the radio. Journalism once again proved that it is the fourth pillar of democracy. If these journalists had remained silent, perhaps history would have remained silent. Thanks to them, the truth came out. This scandal was not just Fall's punishment, but a victory for the media. This moment was one of the greatest victories for press freedom in American history. Power changes a man, and when wealth is involved, conscience is silenced. The same thing happened to Albert Fall. He was famous as a patriotic politician, but in the face of wealth, he forgot his own promises. Greed blinded him. He sacrificed the nation's resources for personal gain. This story is not just about one person. It mirrors the powerful of every era, where the intoxication of power drowns out the voice of justice. Fall probably thought he would never be caught, but history has proven that the breath of truth always remains. His fall left a mark of a lesson for others. The poison of power is sweet, but the end is always bitter. The Teapot Dome taught every system in the world that when power is unbridled, destruction is inevitable, and justice, even if it comes late, will come. The greatest virtue of American democracy is that it learns from its mistakes. The Teapot Dome Scandal shook the entire system, but the same shock also strengthened democracy. Reforms were made in the laws. New rules were made to monitor the financial interests of cabinet members. Proposals like the Public Accountability Act were discussed. Freedom of the media was further protected. The courts strengthened the concept of checks and balances on government power. This was a time when America was rebuilding itself. It could be said that the Teapot Dome was a test of democracy, and America passed the test win with wounds but with courage. This is the irony of history, which ultimately turned out to be good. A shameful event, but a lesson learned. After the Teapot Dome, the eyes of the American people were opened. They were no longer ready to blindly trust. They knew that questioning was the foundation of democracy. Dependence on the media increased, but at the same time, the public began to investigate for themselves. Debates were held in universities, lectures were given, and scandal became part of the curriculum. Students learned that holding government accountable is a civic responsibility. Transparency became a national principle. This was the moment when the public became not just spectators, but participants. This awareness was passed on to future generations. This awareness rose against Nixon at the time of Watergate. The Teapot Dome awakened the collective conscience of the nation. The people understood that silence is the greatest helper of corruption, and when the people wake up, even the powerful tremble. scandal. This is the most beautiful scene of democracy, when the people who speak the truth shake the houses of lies. The Teapot Dome Scandal raised an important question. Is there any place left for morality in politics? Many politicians who came after fall promised to remain honest, but the truth is that power always comes as a test. This battle between morality and interest is centuries old, but the Teapot Dome proved that morality can lose temporarily, but not forever. Fall went to jail, but those who spoke against him became immortal. Among them were those journalists, those judges, and those people who broke the silence. This was the moment when moral power triumphed over political power. Politics bore shame, but morality earned respect. This battle continues even today, in every country and every system. The question is still the same today. Does power leave room for the faithful? Teapot Dome is a historical answer to this question. Yes, it is difficult, but not impossible. There is just a price to pay, sometimes of honor, sometimes of power. After the fall, the government launched large-scale audits and inquiries. Every government department was trying to prove its transparency. Many officers resigned, many were prosecuted. This was called the cleanup era, in which the government tried to clean itself up. The Senate investigative committees asserted their authority. No minister was allowed to make secret deals in the future. It was the beginning of a new era. The public was now accountable for its money. The media kept up the pressure on the government through its investigative reporting. The details of every new budget, every contract began to come to light. The Teapot Dome Scandal opened the way for transparency. This was the bitter lesson that changed the system. Now trust was not just a slogan, it was a responsibility. All these were the changes created by this one scandal. The impact of Teapot Dome was not limited to politics. The literary world also described the incident in its own way. Novelists showed corruption and the battle of conscience through characters. Dramas weaved the fabric of bribery, power, and crime. Moral stories began to be taught in schools. This scandal became a metaphor for literature. Teapot was no longer just a place, but a symbol of corruption. Many poets presented it in a satirical manner. This literary creation was actually an echo of the conscience of the nation, where words said what the law could not. Literature kept history alive. Every new generation read the story and thought, I wish that mistake would not be repeated again. This is the purpose of literature, to hold up a mirror, bitter but necessary. Teapot Dome had become not just a scandal, but a symbol, a weapon of words against corruption. After this scandal, politicians tried to prove themselves right before the public. Honesty began to be mentioned in every speech, but a crack of doubt had appeared in the hearts of the public. No promise seemed true anymore. Every new minister seemed to be the other face of fall. This distrust was dangerous for democracy, but instructive, because it forced the public to ask more questions. Political rallies were now filled with questions, not applause. Journalists raised tough questions in press conferences. The public began to demand reports from their representatives. This was the moment when the people's government actually became the people's. The embarrassment of Teapot Dome gave rise to the concept of accountability. And this is the true spirit of democracy. Accountable government, the fundamental right of the people. This is the gift that this scandal gave, even if it was unwanted. The financial impact of the scandal was also significant. Investors became cautious about government contracts. Oil companies changed their business rules. The concept of conflict of interest became part of the law. Every large company was required to prove its financial transparency. Investment laws were tightened. New restrictions were imposed on the sale of public resources. This was the time when the American economy considered honesty an asset. A new chapter in accountability opened in the business world. The Teapot Dome taught that corruption is not only political, but also economic. A scandal linked capitalism to morality. This lesson is still relevant to every economic system today. When money is connected to honesty, the nation prospers. Otherwise, prosperity becomes temporary and decline becomes permanent. This was the economic message of the Teapot Dome. The Teapot Dome scandal was not limited to American walls. The news spread around the world that America was not immune to corruption. European newspapers called it the morality crisis in America. Many countries began to adopt the principles of transparency in their governments. The scandal became a global movement for accountability. Democracies wondered how to protect public trust. Some countries established public integrity commissions. This was an unintended but positive result. The embarrassment of one country became a lesson for another. That is the beauty of history. Even mistakes lead. The echoes of the Teapot Dome were heard from London to Paris. This was the first demonstration of global media solidarity. The world began to unite against corruption, and America, admitting its mistake, led the campaign. This scandal became the beginning of reform, more than an embarrassment. When the public is tired of a wound, laughter becomes its salve. The Teapot Dome also became the subject of ridicule. In cartoons, politicians were shown trapped inside a teapot. In comedy programs, the name fall became synonymous with corruption. People would say, when you smell oil, you know a new fall has been born. This ridicule was actually a rebellion of the people. They were taking out their anger through laughter. Humor softened the wounds but retained the lesson. This was an interesting aspect of social consciousness. When a nation laughs at mistakes, it is ready to rise above them. This combination of humor and history became ingrained in American culture. After every scandal, people would say, this is another Teapot Dome, and this this phrase reminded them that the truth never dies. Even if it is hidden in laughter, it definitely leaves its mark. This humor was actually a symbol of the awakening of public consciousness. Many years later, the wounds of Teapot Dome began to heal. The new generation left the old scandal on the page of history, but its effects had become part of the American system. The law was strong, the media free, and the public had become aware. It was not easy to restore trust, but not impossible. Each new government made transparency its slogan. Open government campaigns began. People felt that the system was really changing. This is the real strength of democracy, the ability to correct itself. America became more stable after Teapot Dome. The public realized that they should not be afraid of accountability, because this fear gives rise to justice. Politicians learned that trust is easy to lose, but difficult to regain. This lesson was recorded in every office, every position, every decision. Honesty is no longer just a virtue, it has become a necessity. The greatest virtue of history is that it teaches lessons, even if it is through pain. Teapot Dome changed an entire generation. This event was not confined to books, but became part of the system. It was taught as an example in every school, every university. It became a reminder that transparency is strength, collusion is weakness. This was the thinking that made the American people more aware. Every election, every candidate was now more scrutinized. Politics was no longer measured by promises, but by character. This was the maturity of democracy. Teapot Dome proved that even a mistake can show the right path. Just have the intention to learn. If the fall had not fallen, then perhaps the system would never have risen. This contradiction is the beauty of history, where decline becomes the first step to reform. This is the real secret of human progress. If you look at today's world, the echoes of Teapot Dome can be heard everywhere. Sometimes bribery is given new names, sometimes power games are called development projects, and sometimes self-interest is made a political compulsion. The only difference is that today bribery is not given in envelopes, but in the form of contracts, positions, and relationships. The eyes of the media have become sharper, but the cunning hands of politics still play their tricks. The same old methods, only the faces have changed. Once upon a time, oil wells were traded in Teapot Dome. Today, those deals are hidden in digital policies, land leases, and secret agreements. The question is, has man really learned anything from the past? Or are we just repeating history in new clothes? Perhaps the only difference is the screen. The game is the same old one: power, money, and influence. Teapot Dome reminds us that when accountability sleeps, corruption wakes. And when the silence of the people grows, the hands of the powerful grow longer. This is the lesson that we should see in the mirror of time even today. That democracy does not run on votes alone, but lives on honesty and transparency.